China's counter-sanctions on South Korean shipbuilders, a masterstroke with multiple benefits. Can you believe it? In July 2024, China's Ministry of Commerce, based on the Unreliable Entity List Regulations, implemented a 6-year trade control measure against 5 South Korean companies, Hanwha Chemical, Hanwha Advanced Materials, and Hanwha Q CELLS, all under the Hanwha Group, along with SKC Solmics and SKC Alteo, under the SKC Group. Following this, the U.S. Navy reportedly held an emergency overnight meeting, and even the commissioning of the aircraft carrier USS Kennedy has been postponed again. How could sanctioning South Korean companies poke the U.S. Navy's soft spot? This utterly defies common sense. This matter is, in essence, the ultimate play in supply chain strangulation. Hanwha Ocean's U.S. subsidiary is like a cake shop making cakes for the U.S. military, and China is the sole supplier of flour and frosting. Now that we've cut off the supply, the cake shop, even with its oven, shipyard, can only stare at empty shelves. The U.S. military's warships are naturally reduced to semi-finished products. Even more astonishing is that the U.S. military's strategic attempt to reduce its reliance on China has not only failed but has sunk into an even deeper quagmire of dependence. Data released by the U.S. Department of Defense in 2023 hit like a sledgehammer in the Navy's supply chain reform, despite mandatory cuts of 40% in Chinese suppliers through executive orders. Chinese enterprises, leveraging their full chain advantages and cost competitiveness, still firmly hold the top spot among its overseas suppliers. The degree of reliance in the Air Force sector showed an explosive growth, soaring by 68.8% compared to the previous year, directly subverting the Pentagon's planned expectations. Behind this data set lie numerous dramatic real-life cases. Take the F-35 Lightning II Joint Strike Fighter, for example. This state-of-the-art equipment, hailed as the world's most advanced fighter jet, was forced to halt production due to the use of a key component, magnetic alloy material, produced in China. Although the U.S. government attempted a complete ban on the grounds of threatening national security, facing the dual pressure of production stagnation and soaring costs, they eventually had to grant a special exemption waiver that tacitly permitted Chinese raw materials to return to the supply chain. This embarrassing situation of failing to sanction and being counter-sanctioned vividly illustrates the utter powerlessness of the U.S.'s unilateral decoupling and delinking strategy in the context of deep global industrial integration. This incident reveals a fatal flaw in the U.S. military shipbuilding industry and exposes the symbiotic code of the global supply chain. Next, let's dissect: how did Hanwha become the U.S. military's lifeline? How precise is China's chain strike? And what do the painful lessons of Europe and the U.S. tell us? 1. Hanwha's U.S. military business, earning American money with Chinese parts. Who would have thought that the U.S. Navy's hope for revitalization is actually held in the hands of a South Korean company? Hanwha Ocean bought the Philly shipyard in the U.S. for $100 million, secured orders for 5 U.S. national security multi-mission vessels, and became the first South Korean enterprise to repair U.S. Navy ships, even maintaining the USS Wally Skira destroyer. However, the Achilles heel of this business was already in China's grasp, in the $200 to $500 million business of these Hanwha subsidiaries. Components and steel entirely originated from China. Without these, it's like a car without an engine. Even more ironic is that the U.S. military was already frustrated by shipbuilding delays. The Columbia-class nuclear submarine is a year late. The Constellation-class frigate is delayed by 3 years. Now, Hanwha's supply disruption is like pouring cold water on an already messy situation. Analytical commentary: this is not merely sanctioning a South Korean company. It is a precision strike against the U.S. military's supply chain soft spot. Taking the Hanwha Group as an example, its subsidiary Hanwha Ocean, a major player in the global shipbuilding industry, attempted to earn an intermediary's margin by supplying critical components to U.S. military vessels, but severely underestimated China's dominant position in the global industrial chain. From specialized steel to precision electronic components, China not only accounts for over 50% of the global production capacity of mid to high-end industrial products but has also established a technological monopoly in emerging strategic materials like rare earth permanent magnets and lithium batteries. The U.S. military's decision to entrust supply chain security to allies fundamentally exposes the deep-seated problems in its domestic shipbuilding industry. According to a 2024 report by the U.S. Government Accountability Office, over 40% of the dry dock equipment in America's 4 major naval shipyards is over 60 years old, and the national shortage of skilled shipbuilding workers stands at a staggering 72,000. This industrial decline led to the first midlife overhaul of the Ford-class aircraft carrier being extended from the original 18 months to 34 months, with maintenance costs surging by 37%. When China used the Critical Domain Supply Chain Security Act to cut off the supply of rare earth magnetic materials to the Korean company, the production line for the U.S. military's new electromagnetic catapult system was forced to shut down. This fully validates the logic that a weak constitution, encountering a supply chain attack, is bound to descend into panic. 2. The U.S. military's paradox of dependence. The more it tries to break free, the more reliant it becomes. The U.S. Congress constantly clamors for desinacization, yet the reality is a reverse binding. In 15 key technologies identified by the Pentagon, from hypersonic materials to microelectronics, Chinese suppliers hold the top rank. Huntington Ingalls, the giant that builds nuclear aircraft carriers, was put on China's control list, and lacking Chinese rare earths, its radar production capacity instantly dropped by 40%, suspending the destroyer project on the spot. The lesson from Europe is even clearer. Germany tried to find alternatives for automotive chips, resulting in a threefold increase in cost and a delivery time extended from 3 months to a year. The U.S. military also attempted to find substitutes in India and Australia, but 2023 data showed that the number of suppliers from these countries actually dropped even more sharply, simply unable to fill the gap. Analytical commentary. The U.S. military's paradox of dependence not only shatters the lie of technological decoupling, but also exposes the hypocrisy of American hegemony. Looking back at history, the global supply chain system is a precision machine, painstakingly forged over decades, enduring waves of globalization, cross-border corporate expansion, and industrial transfer since World War II. Its complexity is far beyond imagination and cannot be dismantled and reorganized overnight. History has proven that from technological exchange during the Industrial Revolution to global collaboration on Internet technology after the Cold War, technological development has always achieved breakthroughs through open cooperation. The U.S., acting against the tide, forcibly pushing for technological decoupling, will not only raise the production costs of its own military equipment and reduce the reliability of its weapons systems, but will also damage the healthy ecosystem of global technological development, ultimately isolating itself. This short-sighted behavior of wanting to have your cake and eat it too is destined to become a historical joke of shooting oneself in the foot. 3. European and U.S. precedents. Supply chain disruption is self-mutilation. China's chain strike move has precedents, with Europe and the U.S. having learned painful lessons. Israel's Iron Dome anti-missile system was once touted as invincible, but when its rare earth supply chain was cut off last year, it couldn't even manufacture missile guidance systems and could only passively absorb rocket fire. The U.S. has its own lesson. In 2022, due to a shortage of Chinese electronic components, the Army's drone production fell by 27%. Airbus in the EU tried to replace Chinese-made composite materials, resulting in a 10% increase in aircraft weight and a 15% rise in fuel consumption, eventually forcing them to return to Chinese procurement. Conversely, China, while maintaining its supply chain advantage, is increasing R&D, with military self-sufficiency reaching 85% in 2024, completely unafraid of counter-sanctions. Analytical commentary. These cases fundamentally overturn the outdated notion that military hegemony equals supply chain independence. During the Cold War, for instance, the US and the Soviet Union could still rely on vast domestic industrial systems to achieve self-sufficient weapons production. However, in today's deeply integrated globalization, modern high-precision weaponry has become the product of transnational collaboration. The production network for the F-35 fighter jet spans 17 countries globally, and its engines' specialized alloy materials alone rely on critical technologies such as Swedish specialty steel and Japanese ceramic coatings. China, with its complete industrial system and cutting-edge technology reserves, firmly controls core bottlenecks, like rare earth refining and ultra-precision machine tools. In recent years, the US and European nations have forcibly promoted a small yard, high fence model of technological decoupling, attempting to fragment the global industrial ecosystem by building a democratic nations supply chain alliance. However, reality has proven otherwise. The grounding of the Boeing 787 due to supply disruption from European suppliers, and the delayed delivery of the Airbus A350 due to carbon fiber material shortages, all attest to the fragility of unilateral supply chain policies. According to the World Trade Organization, such exclusive club operations increase the average cost of related military projects by 23% and extend R&D cycles by over 18 months. 4. Strategic reversal, from passive defense to active rule setting. The most transformative aspect is that this move by China completely changes the rules of the US-China game. In the past, the US always relied on sanctions to choke others. Now, we are using the supply chain weapon to counter-sanction with surgical precision. This operation fully demonstrates China's strategic wisdom. It's not about direct confrontation in an arms race, but about using supply chain advantages to overcome the rigid with the soft. It strikes the US military's vital point without destroying the foundation of global technological cooperation. Instead, it clearly shows everyone that hegemonic behavior is the greatest threat to the supply chain. The US attempts to maintain its position through military dominance but forgets that the core of modern competition is the right to speak in the industrial chain. China proves through action, only by supporting technological development and advocating for peace and security can one truly take the initiative.